Good morning, everyone. This is a very, very special day. Of course, it's the day before Thanksgiving, so that makes it um, especially exciting. And I do notice already, first of all, I'm Cheryl Beversdorf, and I am a board member of Arlington Neighborhood Village and also the chair of the Communications and Marketing Committee. So I'm honored to be the host of Coffee and Conversation every week. But I did want to acknowledge, first of all, the former host of Coffee and Conversation and say hello to Anita. Nice to see you again, and hope you're doing well. And thanks for joining us today. This is a very, as I said, special event because the other person that we're going to be hearing a lot from is Wendy Zenker. And I can certainly attest, having been on the board now for almost 4 years, that Wendy has done an outstanding job of growing this organization and making it what it is today in terms of the members. The number of members have grown, the number of volunteers have grown. And the thing that's just very, just in general, special about Arlington Neighborhood Village is it helps older adults in Arlington to remain in their homes and live safely and independently with the help of volunteers who provide services like transportation, visits, check-ins, household help, and technology assistance, which we all need more often than not. So I just wanted to, I know Wendy is going to be talking a lot about what's been happening with the Arlington Neighborhood Village, what's going to be coming up, what was talked about at the all hands meeting. But she will talk more about some of the events coming up, but I just want to highlight it because they always say in communication, you say it once and you say it again so people will remember it. So probably the most important event that we should be keeping in mind is the ANV Holiday Lunch, which is on Friday, December 15th. And I think Wendy will be giving more details. And I also just wanted to mention one other thing too, is that this is Medicare enrollment season and open enrollment season, October 15th to December 7th. So if you have any particular needs in terms of changing your policy, now's the time to do it. And again, I'm going to put the recent program that Aging Matters featured with Michelle Thomas, who is the VICAP organizer. She was also on the show here. So I think that's really important. And and you can check out more stuff that's going on, the ANV community updates, which was sent out on the email on November 15th, has lots more details about what's happening coming up in December. And so I don't want to take away time from Wendy because I know she has lots to say, but I think we will still follow the usual process that Gary can give a little bit overview about if you have questions. Do you want to do that, Wendy, in terms of people putting things in the chat?
Sure.
Okay, so Gary, I'm going to turn it over to you just in case we have some new people on and they have some questions as to what they are supposed to do and what we need to do during Wendy's presentation.
Okay, what we'll ask everybody else to do is put yourself on mute. And if you have questions or comments, put them in the chat and Cheryl or I will read them and can pass them on to Wendy as we go. We're also recording this and we'll be posting it to our YouTube channel. So if you don't want to take the chance of showing up on the video, now would be a good time to turn off your camera. Other than that, I'll just turn it over to Wendy and it's all yours.
Thanks so much, Gary. So it's good to see everybody, old and new friends. I'm going to go over a little bit of what we covered at the all hands meeting, but I'm going to go at a slower pace so that you actually can have the opportunity to see it and ask questions about some of the data. And then I've got, to keep you tuned in, I've got an announcement that I'm going to make at the end of the session that I'm going to try hard not to mention before then. So having said that, let me bring up my PowerPoint and do what I can to make it look good on this screen. It's a matter of finding the right thing. Gary and I, this is a classic situation. Gary and I did this a minute ago and we found it without any difficulty. And then it's harder to find when you really want it. Here we go. So everybody, I hope that you can see what's going on now. There we go. All set up. So first of all, this is our board of directors, not everybody. But what the board of directors does is usually the first month of the year in January, after new directors have been elected, they get together as an effort to get to know each other outside of the sort of the work environment. And this past year, we met at Marymount University, which gave us the chance to do a picture on the steps at Marymount in the President's Hall. So you get to do a picture where you get everyone's face and you get to see everybody. So this is our current board of directors, but come January, it's going to look a little bit different with a new member on. In terms of what we're going to do today, we're going to look at trends. We're going to look at some feedback that we've gotten from staff and volunteers, and then talk about new directions we're going. So as I said, one of the things I wanted to make sure we had a chance to do today was just to look at some of these charts that we used at the all hands meeting and really, sort of drill down a little bit into them. So the first trend is on membership. And of course, that's the most important thing that we have to talk about. Who are we serving? How are we extending our reach in Arlington to help even more older adults age in place? And, I wish I could go back to 2016 and 2015. And I'm sure that the numbers exist, and maybe with a little bit digging, I can find them. But for me, what I can do right now is, I've got good numbers that I know about from 2017 to where we are today. And one of the things you can see, first of all, is overall growth in total membership. And we're almost at the point that we've doubled our membership over the last 5 or 6 years. But more importantly, perhaps, following direction, both from our membership, our volunteers, and our board, we have completely expanded the use of our discounted membership category. One of the things we know is that when A&B was started way back when, in 2014, one of the founders seeded the financial aid fund with a $5,000 anonymous donation. So from the very beginning, A&B was able to offer discounted membership to lower income seniors. But this effort to make sure that our membership fee wasn't a barrier to participation really accelerated during the pandemic. And it accelerated during the pandemic, for one important reason, which was we started offering no fee memberships to people who are at risk and in need during 2020-21. So you can see in that third column, the number of no fee memberships that we've offered to people. You'll also see how that number goes down in current years, but in the same time, the number of discounted membership continues to rise. So one of the things we were able to do were to take those people who were in temporary no fee memberships and convert them into discounted memberships. Some of them converted into full memberships, but most converted into discounted memberships. The other thing we did at the end of 2020, the board decided to modify our financial aid program so that in the beginning, we had one number. If your income was less than $49,000, you paid $100. What the board decided in 2020 was to make it a sliding scale. So if your income was less than $49,000, it was $100, less than $36,000, it was $50, less than $26,000, it was $25. And, the director has the authority to waive even the $25 fee. So making that sliding scale really made our membership fee friendlier to people with lower incomes. So where you see, where we are today, of those 388 members, 100 and I don't want to do the math in my head and screw it up, but 137 at that point in time, October, were people who had discounted memberships with A&B. And likewise, if you just look at the far column and you just look at percentages. So in the beginning, it was 10%, we got up to 15%, and now we're generally at 35% of folks with temporary and discounted memberships. 35% of our members fall into that category. So I promised that I was going to go slower and give people a chance to study this chart. If there are any questions, I know we said you could type them into chat, but if anyone has a question on our membership growth, I'd be happy to take it. Okay, let's go a little bit into demographics. Who are our members? So we talked about those 388 members, aged 56 to 103. As I said earlier, the number of people who are in their 50s are 9. It's a very small category. Most of our members are indeed, over 70, 75, or even 80 years old. 72% are female. And as I mentioned, 41% are over 80. 61% of our members live alone. And of those living alone, the vast majority are female. So you think about who is it that we're helping. We're helping people who don't have family, may have never married, or don't have family that are local. And of those, even so, most are female. We talked about this a minute ago, 35% are just in our discounted membership program. But likewise, when you look at other distinguishing characteristics, 31% of our members have mobility, eyesight, or hearing challenges. And most of those are in the mobility family. So they're using a cane, a walker, a rollator, and even some are using a wheelchair. Finally, the number that represent diverse backgrounds, and these are diverse backgrounds in the traditional way that we've counted things. How many are, Caucasian, Asian, African-American, Hispanic, yes, no. So in that category, we represent 14%. But what we don't capture as well as we should is the number of folks that we're helping that represent cultural backgrounds. We have people from Turkey, people from Egypt, people who are French speaking, people who are Russian speaking. We have a lot of folks where English is a second language, but don't necessarily put themselves into some of the traditional diversity backgrounds. I think I read a story in the New York Times recently that the census is really looking to expand the way they capture diversity in upcoming census activities so that they really will capture all of this diversity that we see in our country. But the 14% for us right now represents the traditional way that we look at diversity. Questions on our demographics?
Wendy, how does that 14% match up to Arlington County as a whole?
So not good enough. Not good enough. I think I don't have this statistic immediately available, but I think Arlington County as a whole is potentially 30 or 33% would fall into that category. You have to look and try to get the county numbers for older adults and not the county numbers for, our entire population. So I don't have the number accurately in my hands, but it's, we're not reflective yet of the demographics in the county, and certainly the demographics in the older adult population in the county.
Is there any program in place to increase diversity?
Yeah, I think, one of the things that we want to do going forward, and it's a there are 2 ways that we can increase it. One is more targeted outreach, recruiting members into our programs. And the second is, potentially through a new program, we're going to have the Senior Ambassador Program. So not to get too far ahead of myself, but we've been funded to create what's referred to as the Senior Ambassador Program. This is a program that exists in Alexandria, in Loudoun, in Fairfax counties. What we're tasked to do is to create a handbook of the resources that are available to older adults, the services and programs and supports that older adults can tap into, pull together that resource book, and then also recruit senior ambassador volunteers who are going to become familiar with those resources, be within their communities and very macro communities, condo buildings, ethnic groups, faith institutions, civic associations, really get volunteers throughout the county that are going to become more familiar with the programs and services that are available. And then, be the first person that someone in a neighborhood or in a building goes to and says, I'm having trouble with transportation. What are my options? We think that Senior Ambassador Program will help us be better represented in communities all throughout Arlington. So that's one programmatic way we're going to get there. The second way we want to get there is by hiring another staff person who's really going to focus on outreach and engagement. Right now, the way we get new members is for the most part through word of mouth. People hear about A&V, they know us, they know the work that we're doing, and they talk about it to their friends. So all of the efforts that we've made to increase our discounted membership in senior housing facilities like Culpeper Garden, like APA, like some of the AHC housing offices, have all resulted in an increase of our lower income members coming into A&V. So, right now it's a lot of word of mouth, but we want to be more deliberate in 24 and the future.
So Wendy, we have a question about the notebook you talked about. Does A&V really know all about all the different senior programs available, or is this more about what A&V provides?
A great question. And our effort is to make it, first of all, we don't know everything. And that's why we've got a project lead, Michelle McMahon. Wendy Shapiro, who some of you might know, is working with Michelle. And we're going out and as best we can, trying to find all the programs and services that exist in Arlington. So we're reaching out to certainly the known entities, Parks and Rec, the county, the library, but we're also going out to other nonprofits we know about, Rebuilding Together, Meals on Wheels, elder services for elder legal services. We are tracking down all the leads, all of the metro and the transportation programs that are available. We're doing our best to track down leads, identify the programs, and put them into this handbook. The handbook's not intended to be, the end all and be all of eligibility. It's going to be, a sort of light touch on all of these programs. It's like a telephone directory. You can find out there's a transportation program, but if you want to find out more about that transportation program, we'll have a phone contact, we'll have a name, we'll have a website address that you can go to. I think the first version of the handbook, definitely will be a beta version. It'll be a pilot with the intention of making it better the second time around. So the first issue is not in any means going to be a perfect issue, far from it. But we think once we get it out there, once people start seeing it, then they'll be knocking on our door saying they want to add their program to the handbook.
So we have another question here. She starts with, thank you for all you and A&V do. Have you considered doing special events for the 31% of members with mobility, eyesight, or hearing challenges? She said Susan Wallace had talked about it, but she hasn't heard anything more, but thinks in-person events would be better for people with visual or hearing issues.
So totally agree with that. I don't have plans on a back or front burner, but we have heard that comment, and it will be part of our programming challenge going forward. I think we do want to do more in-person activities. I know we've got this yin and yang that, for example, Coffee and Conversation, people like doing it on Zoom versus in person. So we've got to figure out the right balance there. We also have some people who've raised their hand and asked for a low vision group, support group that would get together. Noelle Derman, who works with us on special projects, is exploring trying to come up with that low vision support group that we can try to form. I think the issue is if people can just keep us posted on what they think they like, we can work hard to try to bring the program about. Let me give an example. Some people have asked for, can we have a French group and a Russian speaking group and a Spanish speaking group? Those are all good ideas. And if we had somebody, a volunteer who wanted to lead them, we could have those groups tomorrow. But we don't right now have a volunteer who says, I want to lead that group. In the interim, one of the things we discovered was that the library has some phenomenal language programs that are available. The library has groups that get together that are Spanish speaking and French speaking groups. The library has resources, newspapers from around the world that are in a person's native tongue. So we've tried in the community update to include a pretty substantial paragraph on the library resources that are available that can, in the interim, in the gap, perhaps help people who want to get together and do more activities in their native tongue. So that's a long answer to say, we hear it, we want to do it. We're looking for volunteers who want to raise their hand and lead something. But in the interim, we try to find something that can fill the gap. I'm going to move on to volunteering, but I'm happy, Gary. I know I can see the number that there are more questions coming up in chat. So feel free to, this is a conversation. It's not intended to be me talking to everybody. So when we look at volunteers, I don't have as good an analysis of volunteers as I would like. All of these numbers that you see are pulled together either by Jean, myself, or Cindy Salavantis, our volunteer coordinator. And there's only so much time we can spend on doing the analytics out of our database. But for example, when you look at our volunteers, you'll see that we started talking about volunteers in two different ways. One, we've got a number that's in our database. People who raised their hand and said they wanted to volunteer with A&V, they've gone through a clearance process and they're officially labeled a volunteer. Well, that's very different than the number of active volunteers, people who have done something within the past year. And even when we look at active volunteers, we have that very big range of people who do hundreds upon hundreds of hours and people who do 5 hours. So one of the things we've started to look at in the last 2 years have been the number of active volunteers, a volunteer who did at least one service during the course of the year. I don't have that number counted for 2023 to date, but we will count it, at the end of December and know what our equivalent number is for active volunteers in 2023. But that's one way that we're trying to distinguish. We're also trying to cull the number of volunteers in our database. We're reaching out to people who haven't volunteered in the last 2 years and saying, do you still want to be a volunteer with A&V? We don't want to have a name of a volunteer that, creates an erroneous count of the number of volunteers we have to do services. And you can see the big difference between active volunteers and total. It's about half the number. So we're trying to get to a more accurate representation of who are our active volunteers. But then on the other hand, take a look at, the incredible work that our volunteers have been doing, the number of miles they've driven at their own expense, the number of hours that have been donated.
Wendy, does active volunteers include non-direct service?
Yes. So good point, Gary, because, just a reminder there, we think about volunteers in 2 categories. One is direct service and the other are management volunteers. So direct service volunteers are the ones who are giving rides, running errands, helping with tech, a walking buddy, a friendly visitor, a home chore, or a home maintenance volunteer. Home organizing volunteers, people who work directly and serve members one-on-one. But we also have management volunteers, and these are all the people who help run the organization. As much as I talk about myself, Jean, Mary Ellis, Noelle, or Cindy, we can't do the job that A&V does without easily what I consider to be 50 to 70 management volunteers, people who are helping to run the organization, running committees, serving on our board of directors, being an office volunteer. We've got 10 active volunteers who are in the office 5 days a week, answering phones and making connections between members and volunteers. So active volunteers includes both types of volunteering for A&V. So let's move forward to service requests. Absolutely an increasing workload year to year. I say transportation's inching up, and that's to say that transportation compared to where we were before the pandemic is sort of inching back up. But what you can see here is on the first line, the total number of fulfilled service requests that we did in a particular year. And again, remember that last column is only 6 months. It's not a year. So you can see that the number of fulfilled service requests is going up, as you would expect as our membership grows and our volunteer corps grows. It looks like we'll be at 4,000 for 2023. But what we do under that is look at the percentage of the different types of things that we do for people. So you can see that back in 2018, before the pandemic, 72% of what we did was transportation. And that was taking a member somewhere. Number of transportation, and we look at it today, is 42%. It was as low as 37 and 38% during the pandemic, heavy years of the pandemic. On the other hand, errands, and errands is where a volunteer does something for a member involving transportation, but the member doesn't go along. So errands are where we go shopping for someone, where we pick up a prescription, take a book back to the library. And what happened and what exploded during the pandemic were volunteers doing errands for members. The member stayed home, member stayed safe, member, I'm not going to remember the phraseology, but, stayed behind closed doors. But our volunteers stepped up to do things for member, limiting direct contact. So you can see that during 2021, 22, errands were high, but at, entering 23, errands are starting to taper off a little bit. Transportation is starting to inch back up. You can see what we're doing in home chores, relatively stable, but growing. Walking buddy and visitor, I think that's a pretty significant growth there, from 11% to 18%. Certainly the help that we're giving people for technology, and then that wonderful catch-all phrase of other. Now, what this doesn't count, but we do pay attention to, is the number of unfilled service requests that we get. So, everything that we do is phenomenal. It's wonderful, more credit to all of us. But we also pay an enormous amount of attention to unfilled service requests, the things that we can't do. And I think those of you in the audience who are drivers know, how hard we work to fill transportation requests. But invariably, the number, our percentage of transportation requests fulfilled is going down, not up. So it used to be that we were pretty happy, everything was 98% fulfilled. Generally, overall, we still can be at that very high number of fulfilled requests, but transportation is a drag, and we're not able to fill all of the transportation requests that we get. Let me not move on, and let me stick with that. Let me stick with requests just for a little while. Questions on the different types of requests we do for members?
Are you getting any requests for new kinds of services?
The newest kind of service we've gotten so far has been the home organizing, decluttering work, and we've been doing that now for a year or two. So that's the newest kind, and more people are taking advantage of that. I think in the tech world, one of the things we did in the past year is we had a tech coach. So up to a point in time, we would help people one-off with their tech needs. My computer didn't work, my printer's not working. How do I do this with my phone? One of the things we did this past year was say, if you need a tech coach, if you need the same person to help you over a period of time become more familiar with technology, we can do that. So we've got a couple of people who signed up to be tech coaches, and they're providing that continuing service to people. We also, in the past year or so, set up some office hours at Culpeper Garden, trying to help those residents do better with their technology. And those office hours at Culpeper were open to all the residents, not just A and B members at Culpeper. At this point, Culpeper's taken on that responsibility themselves, so they're running their own office hours. But for a year and a half, we did those office hours for Culpeper. But again, as with anything, we're open to hearing what people need that we may not be doing right now, and if we can be helpful with that. I think one of the things that Donna mentioned at the all hands meeting in September was, that we need to do a better job connecting with people who are socially isolated. So we really want to pay attention to that in the coming year and think what we can do about that. So, what backs all this up is money. And, what are our finances, and what kind of money do we raise and bring in? And the next slide is going to talk a little bit about how we spend our money. But one of the things you can see, and again, it's a change over time. So what this chart does is look from 27 to 2022, the last full year, and say, you know, where did our money come from? What did we get in terms of membership dues? What did we get in terms of donations? What did we get in terms of grants? And again, you can see over time, we have less of a reliance on membership dues, more of a reliance on donations and grants. It's just, it's been a, you know, I think part of that tendency is as people get to know us, you know, we're more likely to have more people know about us and to make donations to us. And likewise, as we are able to show the performance and the impact that we have, we become a more attractive applicant to people that are making grants. That said, there's a limited number of grants that we can apply for. So if anybody knows anybody who you think you have a philanthropic funder who might be interested in helping older adults age in place, let us know about it and we'll approach them for a grant. And likewise, you know, we have had pretty successful fundraising campaigns in the fall over the last couple of years. I think you guys are all familiar with the fact we're in the midst of our fall fundraising campaign right now. We've got a goal of raising $45,000. We're a little bit more than halfway to that goal. But again, you know, raising money through our campaigns, we've had very generous matching grants from the Scheidel Foundation over the past couple of years. And this year in particular, Tim and Elise Burns made a very generous matching grant to us of $10,000 during our fall campaign. So again, these are the funding streams that we look at: membership, donations, and grants. And you can see the change in how we rely on those resources. So then the question becomes, you know, you raise all that money, how do you spend it? So here is, you know, the chart on how we spend our money. And this is our 23 budget, current year budget, looking at the projected use of funds. You know, we did a projection for the board and saying, what do we think it's going to look like this year? So it looks like we'll spend about $350,000. You know, a good portion of that is spent on payroll, and that's the payroll which covers myself, Jean, and Mary Ellis. Minimal fringe benefits. We want to, in the future, indeed make a better benefits package available to employees. That's one way that you are able to recruit and retain staff, is by offering a benefits package. We haven't done that up to this point. We want to. Business expenses, those are usually our insurance costs. Contract services covers the things we contract for. So the things we contract for are, one, we have some consultants that contract. Now, to those of you in the outside world, Cindy Salavantis and Noelle probably look like employees, but they're not. They're consultants. Cindy does 15 hours a week. Noelle does about 20 hours a week, but they both have consulting contracts with us. They're not employees. The other kinds of services that we contract for, we have a bookkeeper. This used to be something that Pete Oliveri did for us in the beginning years, but the workload got to be almost full time. So about 3 years ago, we contracted with a bookkeeper who comes in every 2 weeks and takes care of, you know, recording our expenses, cutting checks, keeping QuickBooks up to date. We also have a technology consultant who's, you know, we have our technology team, but at the same time, our technology became more sophisticated in the office. So we now have a group called Caldwell Consulting that provides that technology support that we need. And also is, for example, a help desk. When something doesn't work in the office, there's someone we can call and who responds almost immediately and fixes our problems. The work that I talked about for the Senior Ambassador Program is done under consultant services. So Michelle McMahon is a contractor working on the Senior Ambassador Program. But those are the kinds of things that you'll see under contract services. Facilities and equipment essentially is the rent that we're paying for our space at Church of the Covenant. And operations covers all the other things that make an organization run. It's the stamps that we buy, the Xerox paper, the toner, all of the supplies that make the office run. And then in specific program categories, that 19,000 represents things like the membership fee that we pay to the 55 plus program, this subscription fee we pay to Washington Consumer Checkbook, and also the cost for events that we host. So for example, the volunteer recognition event, and this past week, the Thanksgiving celebration or the summer picnic are all the kinds of things that are in that program category. And then there's a catch-all of everything else. So any questions on our money and how we spend it? Oh, that's good. You guys are not auditors, but these numbers do add up. That's what I'm happy about. So we keep talking about this. How do we get the job done? We've said it. Gary brought it up in an early question. Direct service volunteers, management volunteers, incredible office staff volunteers that are there every single week throughout the year, answering the phone, taking care of members and volunteers and hooking them up. The people who staff our committees, whether it's the finance committee, the fundraising committee, the events committee, the health and wellness committee. I mean, there are people who staff those committees, the coffee and conversation team. I mean, we must have 7 or 8 people as a team that make coffee and conversation work on a weekly basis. So we've got an incredible volunteer corps that makes all these things happen. A board of directors, I've mentioned the small paid staff and consultants. And then of course, we've got partners throughout Arlington, whether that's partners at the Department of Housing, the Arlington Area Agency on Aging, Parks and Recreation, or libraries in the county, or partners like Culpeper Garden, the Arlington Partnership for Affordable Housing, Arlington Food Assistance Center, the Arlington Housing Corporation. All of these organizations partner with us to get our job done. We don't, we are not a lone ranger by any means. So what are we hearing from people?
Wendy?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I was just going to ask, obviously we're close now to starting a new year with new board members, but in the future, are there certain categories or special skills that might be welcome for new board members, just to think about in terms of people that we don't have and
Sure.
that we'd like to have?
Sure, absolutely. I mean, I'd say first, diversity. We want our board to be representative of Arlington and of our community. So that's number one to reach for. We need more financial management expertise. It takes our treasurer is very involved in operations for the organization. So you need to find someone with that really wonderful skill set to be treasurer. So we want to keep looking for that. Communications and marketing expertise. What we all say is that I don't think it's as true as it used to be that, A&V was Arlington's, hidden gem or best kept secret. I think we are getting to be better known, but nonetheless, whatever we do, we need to be better known throughout the county, because that will result not only in more members, more volunteers, more support for older adults, more donors coming to us. So the communications and marketing matters a great deal. I mean, I probably could go on with other levels of expertise, but those are the ones that immediately come to mind.
Okay, thanks.
So, and again, a couple of slides here, and I think, what do we hear generally? And this is what people tell us, not what we're bragging about, is that we've done a really spectacular job serving members, and especially the service that we provided during the pandemic. I think, as much as the pandemic's in our rearview mirror, we've all got to remember that we never closed. We operated continuously. In the very beginning, Jean or I was always in the office. We always had volunteers who were willing to put themselves at risk if necessary to help a member who needed to go to an eye doctor appointment or some other kind of medical appointment that had to be in person. So we've just done a really, really good job. I think everyone's pleased with the increase that we're seeing in membership and our volunteer numbers. As much as I say we always need more drivers, we really are bringing in new drivers, and those new drivers are getting engaged almost immediately. We're following up on volunteers that don't immediately get engaged. But we're never going to have enough drivers. We always need more. Very positive feedback about everything we're doing to open membership up to everyone in Arlington, and so that income should not be a barrier to being a part of A&V. We have seen increasing diversity. As I've said many times, we need to do better. We've got strong financial position, so we are raising enough money to cover our budget, and our budget is going up year to year. So we keep raising more money. You know, it's really important for any nonprofit to bring in each year what they need to manage and fund their year's expenses. We're doing a better job on communication, but at the same time, we dropped some communications that we shouldn't have dropped. Many of you probably remember we used to do a quarterly A&V Voices. We haven't done one of those probably for the last 18 months, if not longer. We are communicating with people in different ways, but some of the really tried and true solid ways that we had been communicating got dropped, and we need to resurrect those and get back into the game. We do a good impact report probably every other year. We need to do one every single year. You know, we've fallen back on a 2-pager that's been, you know, a performance report that gives the statistics, but doesn't tell the whole story of A&V. So we've got to pay more attention to communication. Generally, people like the assistance they get, and overall, people are proud of our mission and proud to be a part of A&V. What are we hearing from the surveys that we've done? People, you know, very high numbers for part of a caring community. They get good value, treat people with respect, strong support for our operations, volunteer services, recommending membership to others. I mean, those are great percentages. People would like us to advertise the membership fee sliding scale better. Better understand what the plan B is when we can't provide a ride. What's the backup in terms of, you know, people's understanding how to use either Metro Access or the senior discount for taxis. People are asking for more referrals and you know, good contractors for different kinds of services that they need. Perhaps do a better job of publicizing what's available to people. And, you know, folks want better ways to connect with others, one who live nearby or speak the same language. And that gets back to something that people asked for 2 years ago, which was a better directory of our membership. And we still haven't been able to accomplish that yet. In terms of events, you know, people continue to want to see both in-person and Zoom events. They like the hybrid approach. I think, you know, we're going to try to do more in-person events in the coming year, but we want to be responsive to our audience and give them what they want. We're trying to do a better job of highlighting events in emails, but at the same time, we don't want to send so many emails out that people, you know, delete them, don't read them, or unsubscribe from our communication. So that's that balancing act that you're looking for. People ask that we record CNCs, and we started doing that this past year. Gary does a phenomenal job of being on every CNC, recording it and posting it to our YouTube channel. So that's a huge success for us in the past year. We are doing, you know, dine-arounds. We do a monthly lunch for men and women. We've had some celebratory dinners, a few tours. You know, John Thomas has taken us out to the Perch out at McLean. He's taken us, I think, on the subway out to Dulles, and recently we went down to the new water park down in Crystal City. So we want to do more of those tours and activities. We're going to be planning our Chinese New Year celebration in February. You know, Gene Anderson's on it, and we're going to pick out the restaurant that we go to. So, you know, just let us know the kinds of things you want. If you're interested in these kinds of activities, join the events committee. Again, the same story. We need to find volunteers who want to lead these things. And that's one way that we can do more of them. And as I mentioned before, we've got to figure out our own strategy for better engaging with some of our more isolated members. So IT, you know, we did put up a new website that was a priority for us. We got it up and running over a year ago. I think people really like the website. They are able to find what they want. They can do things on the website. We've got a good events calendar that's up on the website, and we try very hard to keep it up to date. We have a new phone system that's probably transparent to many of you, but it makes a big difference to those of us who work in the office. Not only is it a new phone system that's in the office, it's what's called voice over IP. So here I'm talking to you from home today. I've got an A&B phone on my desk. So all I need to do is log into that phone, and I got the office phone ringing here, ringing at my home office, and we're able to take care of things 100% in a remote environment. So that new phone system, which we put in, I think maybe 6 months ago, really makes an operational difference for all of us. And one of the announcements, one of my 2 announcements, we're next week starting to explore a new database for A&V. We have, many of you probably have heard us use the phrase, we have an access system database. It's wonderful. It does good things for us, but it has limitations. So we're really exploring a new database. We're going to pilot test the system. We've got 2 trainings set up on Tuesday and Friday of this coming week to be exposed to this new system. We're going to play with it for a month or 2, see if it meets our needs. And if it does, then we'll make the big leap and transition to a new system. But we do have this opportunity to have, a period of time where we're going to explore it, test it, see if it meets our needs. And if it does, make the big decision to move forward. But we're making really good progress in technology. Things not mentioned. We have what's referred to as a server. So we have remote access to all of our working files, whether we're in the office or working remotely. Any questions on technology? Patson is on the phone, and he's chaired our IT committee for many years, and he was a huge proponent of moving to the new phone system. I know I fought him and said, I can't do it. And finally, he beat me down and we did it. And, I don't want to look back. It was the best decision we ever made. And we're about to make that same kind of leap, moving forward into a new database. So what have we heard from volunteers? All of our volunteers think that the initial training they get is adequate. And that, I think on some level, we should probably call that initial training orientation. But they appreciate the orientation. Actually, Cindy gave a presentation at the regional WAVE meeting of all the area villages on volunteer coordination. Since that presentation, several other villages have joined Cindy's volunteer orientation program and complimented us on what we're doing. But having said that, we know that more training is needed, that once people get involved helping our members, they're asking for more help and figuring out how to help frail members, those with limited mobility, any difficult situations that come up. What happens when they are meeting a member who's got some depression or maybe even mild dementia. So volunteers want more training and how to best address those challenges. Volunteers want some more opportunities from new and experienced volunteers to interact, refresher training for some, training on topics of interest, better understanding of how the office operates. We're happy and able and willing to do all of this. It's just really a matter of figuring out the program and what people want to hear from, where they want to meet, how they want to get together. I know there are lots of volunteers that provide direct services on this call, in the audience right now. So make sure that you guys give us feedback on what you'd like to see. Some improvement ideas that people have put forward. Maybe sometimes we should try to do one-way rides because of the time commitment. We've got a request right now in the system for someone who wants to be picked up at 9:30 and has an 11:30 procedure and does not know when they'll be ready to come home from that procedure at Virginia Hospital Center. We don't get lots of those kinds of requests, but we get them. So would that be something that would be easier to do as a one-way ride, getting there, getting home from there, versus one volunteer doing both ways. And one of the challenges with doing one-way rides is you have to find twice as many volunteers versus if you get one volunteer to do a round trip. But it's something that, we know is something we have to consider and test out. Again, languages keeps coming up. Maybe we could figure out who are our Spanish-speaking volunteers. How could we get them connected with our Spanish-speaking members? There has been some discussion of forming a diversity, equity, and inclusion committee. That again it's an idea. It's nothing that I can tell you that we have specific plans to do, but it's definitely something that several people have suggested that we do. And people are asking for an easier way for volunteers to accept service requests, and that's going to be tied into the new database. In the new database, conceptually, one way volunteers might accept a service request is that they go online to a calendar. They see on the calendar what the open rides are or the open request. They click on one and they assign it to themselves. What happens right now is a volunteer sees it, they write to the office reads it, the office responds, the office speaks to the volunteer or the member and sends a confirmation email out, all of which can take hours or over a weekend could take days. Wouldn't it be more efficient if a volunteer could see an open request on a calendar through a portal, click on it, take the assignment, know that they've got it locked in, or if that request has already been taken, pick something else that they can do. So it would make the whole process better for volunteers and would likely increase our fill rate on service requests because we wouldn't lose as much time trying to make that happen. So we're hoping that a new database that we pilot test is going to be able to make this volunteer process more efficient. I hope that made sense to most people. So communications, and again, it's been a theme throughout, increasing diversity. Maybe some of our members and volunteers can do a better job of getting flyers and brochures out within their neighborhood, get in front of civic associations, faith communities. I've mentioned our Senior Ambassador Program. That's absolutely going to be a way for us to get deeper into communities throughout the county. And, it never drops off our radar, but try to figure out how we can do a better member directory or create a member directory for folks. I want everyone to know it's there. It's not done. It's not even started. We tried to start it last year. It didn't get off the ground. But it's something that we recognize that people ask for. Whew. So strategic plan, it's got these 5 focus areas: awareness, membership, volunteers, organizational capacity, funding models. We really talked to all of these subjects throughout this presentation. Where do we go? Smart growth. We've got to have volunteers and members grow at the same pace. We've got to pay attention to that strategic plan and build action plans for each of the different goals. We talked about several ways that we're going to increase our internal capacity in terms of new staff hires, new systems, strengthen our partnerships, diversify our membership, deal with increasingly frail and isolated members. Again, I've covered all of these things in more detail throughout this presentation, but this is where, this is the summary of where we're going. So with that phrase, where we're going, let's just remember we're part of the essential services for Arlington right now. We're part of the safety net for seniors. I love this picture. This is our picture at our holiday party last year. We acted like a family and said, everybody's got to get up here and get their picture taken as a group. And I love being able to use this picture, included on many of the presentations that we do, because it's our way of showing who we are. A picture like this is worth, as everyone would say, 1,000 words in saying who it is we are. So having said that, let me circle back to the announcement. We're moving. A&V is moving. We've been at the Church of the Covenant, I think, from the very beginning. And that has been a wonderful home for us. And we have enjoyed it immensely. They have been great partners for us. But as I think many people know, it's got stairs in there, which is, a challenge for many of us and for many of our members and volunteers. And in that office where, 3 or 4 people sit at any one time, it's very difficult for everyone to be on the phone, for everyone to be talking, for everyone to be talking to people who have some hearing challenges. So that space doesn't work for us anymore. We think we need more space to do our job. And so we're going to be moving, and we're going to be moving to St. Andrews. St. Andrews has what's referred to as the Renahan Center. It's across, I think many of you know St. Andrews because we used to have our holiday parties there in their big fellowship hall. Well, across from that fellowship hall is what's referred to as the Renahan Center. And that'll be first floor access. It's an outside door. You walk into that door, you'll immediately be in A and B space. It's got a couple of offices. We'll have a nice big space for the office staff to be housed. We'll have what's equivalent to a conference room, and then we'll have a storage room. We're accepting donations now of wheelchairs and walkers and other kinds of materials that we pass on to other people. So we'll have some storage for that. But it's going to be brand new space for us. There's painting going on and new flooring being put in. And we're hoping that we move sometime near the end of December and potentially are there January 1. One of the things that space could do for us is give us some, more virtual meeting space. So if a Spanish, the coffee and conversation group wanted to get together in person, potentially we could do something there. But if we're talking about having a Spanish conversation group meet, or if we want to do classes on different subject areas, that conference room would permit us to do some on-site classes and conversation. If we wanted to do get-togethers for our volunteers, one choice is to do it in a restaurant and do a happy hour in a bar, but the other is to have our own little happy hour in our physical office space and encourage people to come in and see what our operation looks like and how we get the job done. So we're excited about the move, and we hope that it is everything that we hope it will be. There wasn't a whole lot of space available in Arlington for an organization our size. We are relatively small. We were looking for about 1,200 square feet. We didn't want to be in an office building. We didn't want to be, go into an office building, go up an elevator, go down a hallway. So it was a little bit of a challenge looking for space, but that's where we're going to be. So having made, two good announcements. One, really, absolutely exploring a new database, which is fundamental to our operations, and having the chance to move to bigger office that's also 1-story living. So I'm opening up the chats just to see if there, I know Gary's kept an eye on it. I'm just seeing if there's anything more recent that Noelle Derman is the person who's looking for setting up a low vision group. It's not set up yet. So we're really just exploring it right now, Uzamunda. And yes, Nancy and Pax noted there was a group early on that was a low vision group. We're reaching out to Donna and asking if she can help us think about what's needed and how we plan for it. One of the questions was, our backup for when, one ways to deal with not filling a ride was to find somebody who we could pay for those few emergency situations that we had. We've been looking all year long. It turns out that it's more complicated than it seems in terms of insurance coverage. If an individual is a paid driver, even though we see them as a volunteer that we happen to be paying, some insurance companies see them as a more commercial operation. We had one person who, when he checked with his insurance company, told him his insurance would go up $13,000. Now, that was one person, that was one anomaly. We know somebody in Alexandria who does this for a village down there, their insurance went up $300. Was it a difference between a young man versus an older woman? Who knows? But there were challenges that we found in this. For a couple of times, we tried to use a taxi or an Uber. One of the problems and challenges there is that you don't get the same person doing the drop off and the pickup. So when the taxi's there to pick up a person, they don't know who they're looking for. And likewise, the member walking out isn't familiar with and doesn't know how to find the taxi or the Uber driver they should be looking for. So we've tried a couple of different ways of exploring this. Haven't found one that's successful, but it's still, something that we're swirling around in our head and trying to figure out. Thoughts about expanding hours, or also Saturday? Thanks, Pat Burke. We haven't done that yet. When it gets to the point that we think it's necessary for the office to be open on a weekend, we certainly would be willing to consider that. I don't know if we're there yet, but the idea of expanding hours during the day, right now our office hours are 10 to 3. The reality is that somebody works in the office generally from 10 to 6. So sorry, I'm just trying to make this not be a problem. So, myself, Jean, Mary Ellis, we are physically in the office working, as I say, easily till 5 or 6 o'clock at night. It's just the office phone that's limited to 10 to 3. And at some point when we think the need is there, we could expand that. We'd also have to expand, though, our office staff to have that coverage. Weber asked about how long the training period is for volunteers. The orientation session is usually about a 45-minute session. And then after that, it's on-the-job training. You do it and you learn how to do it. You get advice and guidance from the office or from Jean. But that's about the extent of it. Connie, you make a comment about, more centrally located for those of us in South Arlington. Certainly one of the things we want to do is find more volunteers as well in South Arlington, because, we'll have a better job servicing members if we have volunteers who live closer to where those members are living. So it's just generally, the same challenge. We want to find more volunteers. We want to find more volunteers in communities throughout Arlington. So I think that got me through all of the open questions there in the chat. When I signed up to do this, I signed up to do the Wednesday before Thanksgiving because I figured who else would want to do it. And then on the second level, I thought this will be over in a half hour. But instead, I've taken your full hour. I hope you found it useful. I hope we answered questions that people might have. I know for some people, there was a little bit of a repeat on information, but I think we got to spend a little bit more time on it and hopefully gain a better understanding of what it is that we're doing.
Wendy, if I could jump in, you answered Weber's question about direct service volunteers, but for things like people working in the office, it's a much longer process.
Oh, absolutely. Yes.
Experienced volunteer, they get hands-on training, and then they work with that volunteer until they are comfortable doing it by themselves. So if Weber's thinking about something like that, it's not, hey, we'll talk to you for an hour and then hand you a phone and say, get to it. So
thanks, Gary. You're absolutely right. And as you say, when a new office volunteers come on, and we, essentially doubled or tripled the number of office volunteers, it is one, it's first an assessment. Are they comfortable on the computer? Can they do the job? Once they pass that initial assessment, then it's, as Gary said, it's either 2 or 3 shifts, and that's, 3 hours each of working with a current office volunteer to make sure they understand what the job is and that they can do it well and that they can do it independently.
I have a question to get a copy of the slides.
Yeah, the slides are certainly in the transition, excuse me, they're in the video transcription that Gary's done that'll go up on our YouTube channel. But I can also post the slides up on our website. It's probably a useful piece of information generally to have on the website.
Wendy, I had a question. I know once in a while, I know people put in requests, and some of those, not transportation, those requests seem for more skilled than I think what our volunteers should do. Like, I think I saw one, I want to build a ADA ramp for somebody. I mean, I'm assuming Now, for a while, we were referring people, I know, for home health care, but I was wondering about some of those
Sure. So Nancy-
requests
right.
that I think take more skill.
Right. So Nancy, I'm gonna respond to the specific you offered, and then speak generally. So the specific you offered, interestingly, the request wasn't to build a ramp. The request was for someone to come in and help them understand, is a ramp going to be the right solution for them? You know, it wasn't to build a ramp. It was
Okay.
to talk about a ramp or grab bars or other tools that would be helpful to someone being able to stay at home. So that's a specific. I just want to leave that out there. We don't build ramps. If someone wants a ramp built, you know, what we would probably do is direct them to Rebuilding Together, which does do ramps. If they're lower income, Rebuilding Together will do it on a volunteer basis. If not, they might have contractors that they can recommend to them. But beyond that, Nancy, the global answer to your question is that members become pretty sophisticated with the kinds of requests that they put in. So number one, we do anything that requires a license or something like that, we can't do, and we direct them to contractors. But if you look at some of the tech requests that we get, you know, people are asking for a lot in terms of technology. It's not just my remote doesn't work or my printer, you know, ran out of toner. They're, how do I use QuickBooks? How do I do this? How do I do that? On some of those requests, we put it out there and we see if a volunteer wants to do it. And after a while, we stop asking. But we're not a gatekeeper. There are things we are a gatekeeper about and we say no to. But there are other things that we're not a gatekeeper and we say, let's put it out there and see if someone wants to do it. Many times we're surprised that someone says yes. Other times you'll see the same thing up there. I think there was somebody who wanted help with their wanting to learn how to do more artwork on their iPad. I bet you I saw that for weeks. And I thought that someone would take it. I thought that there'd be some artist person who actually was interested in that. But it turned out not to be the case. But we did try. So
But do you think the member, but I guess when things are a little bit out of the ordinary, do you think the member is told we can try, but
Yes.
it's,
Yes.
I mean, I would hate for a member to be disappointed for some reason, thinking that, yes, we have somebody.
No,
to
we
do
talk it through
that.
with them. We do talk it through with them.
Okay, well, wow, this has been quite a program here. Wendy, thank you so much, and thank you for all that you do.
It's not me, it's everybody. I mean,
I know,
hope
I
that was
know.
the message everybody got from this presentation. You know, it's no one person that's getting all of this done. To use an old phrase from who knows when, the 80s or the 90s, it takes a village. And that's what we are.
Wow, that's really apropos.
Yes, it is.
Yes,
So I hope everybody has a great Thanksgiving.
likewise.
And again, you know, you can start calling the office now or emailing to get on the RSVP list for the holiday luncheon. It'll be around 12 o'clock. You know, we'll be specific on timing, but it's going to be in the same location at Church of the Covenant.
Okay, and be sure and tune in next week for Coffee and Conversation. We'll be learning about caring for and enjoying trees with Jessica Strother. So totally different topic than what we had today, but I too want to wish everyone a very happy Thanksgiving and give thanks for Arlington Neighborhood Village, and we'll see you next week.
Okay. Bye-bye, everybody.